It's about time because we're going there. Hi, friends. Welcome to another episode of We're Going There. I'm your host, Bianca Waters-Olthoff, and I am so honored today. I know I usually start the podcast with I'm honored or I'm excited, but today I'm both. I think that might be like horsoned, as in like, that sounded Spanish. That sounded Spanish. It is not a Spanish word. I am honored and excited today because on the podcast, and these are some of my favorite podcasts, when I actually get to sit down with somebody that I know. On the show today, I'm honored and excited to have Stephanie Mae Wilson be part of the podcast as we talk about life, creating the life that you want to live, her life, and how what she's learned in her life can parlay into what you can learn into your life to create a life that you love. Stephanie is a podcaster, she's a writer, and more than that, she's a good human, helping humans become good humans. Welcome to the show, Stephanie. I'm so excited that you're here.
I am horse-sided to be here. Like, truly. I'm honored. I'm excited. You know, I mean, I say this as often as I can. I have been a fan of yours for a bazillion years. I love your work. Everything that you do. I just feel like I'm in your corner with a giant set of pom-poms, like obnoxiously big, and always have been. So it's really, really fun to get to be here.
I will attest that though we've only connected in real life just a few times, I get that from you. And you are a cheerleader for people. So welcome to the show. I'm so excited that you're here. I want to just honor you before we dive into like content that is going to be super helpful for our listeners. But I had to change our recording podcast date, but it was supposed to be because you are in season 10. This is a big feat for us. We crossed this milestone of 10 seasons as a podcast. I want to say we are at about 3 million downloads, and you get to be part of this season that's so seminal. And the flexibility in your schedule has actually worked in our favor. So I'm honored and excited that you're here. But also, we didn't meet in America. Like we digitally met in America, but we physically met. If I'm not mistaken, wasn't the first time that we met in real life, IRL, was at Brianna's wedding in Costa Rica?
I think so. Yeah.
I think that was the first time. I want to say that was the first in-person gathering that we had. And then we connected later on at a couple different places. But to see the journey that you have been on Bree's been married for about 8 years, if I'm not mistaken. No, 5 years, 6 years. To see the journey that you've been on over the last couple of years has been outstanding. Mm-hmm. And you are creating a life that you want to live and a life that you are loving. There's going to be a podcast listener out there that's like, that's the place that I am in. I think what's hard is, and I'm going to apologize to the very few male listeners that we have on the show. I want the practical handles that you're going to share to be for both men and women, but you have a message and you have a heart to really resource women in an everything era. So before we dive into practical handles and how do we actually do this, can we start identifying some problems? Because there's a podcast listener out there that's like, yes, I want to create a life that I love. I don't know where to begin. I feel so overwhelmed. I'm in this new job, or I'm just graduating college, or I just stepped into this relationship. And there's this weird era that you talk about and you've put really good language around. So can you give us a little context for the everything era?
Yes. So, I've been doing this work as, I started as a blogger, turned into resources and courses and books and a podcast. And I've gotten to walk so many women through kind of their 20s, early 30s time of life, as I've been doing the same. My mission in life has always been to be who you needed when you were younger. And so I feel like that's always what I do. It's I'm learning things, I'm taking notes. And then, if I come across anybody who might need something that I picked up along the way, like turn right here, not left here. Don't forget to bring a snack to that part of the road. Like bring a sweater, it's going to help. Don't date that guy, then I want to pass it back. I just feel like I'm a big sister in real life, but I'm also a big sister at heart. And so that's the work that I've been doing. And, as I've been doing this work, I also have been trying to figure out so many things in my life. In the last 10 years, I've gotten married. I've had 2 kids. I've bought a house. I've, created a business. I've, tried to figure out what I'm doing with my career, all these different pieces. And I knew both from my experiences and the experiences of other women that this was hard, but I didn't know there was really more to it until a couple years ago. And I heard this statistic. Researchers, they did it was researchers at the University of Michigan and Boston University did this rare study of lifespan development. And they found that 80% of our life's most defining moments happen before we turn 35. Now, granted, that is the average. But when I heard that, I thought, like, there's no way. So I looked into it a little bit closer, and averages, again, there's an ish after all of these dates and ages and everything. So lots of issues here. But the average age for women of their first marriage, of having kids, of
Mm.
their, things like big home purchases, figuring out kind of what direction you want to walk in for your career, really the majority of those decisions are made by the average woman in the decade-ish between our 25th and 35th birthdays. And even if we don't make those decisions during that time, which some of us don't, there's still immense pressure to make those
Mm.
decisions during that time. And
That's
so
a
that's
different
what
sort of ish, honey. That's a
oh,
different ish.
that is a different ish. And that
Those
was really the
decisions.
thing.
Oh, man.
The decisions and then the pressure, that was really the thing that so I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like this is a real thing. This is something that's happening in our lives. And even if we're not making these decisions, there's pressure to, and pressure to do things a certain way. And that was the other thing that as I got more curious about what's really happening here, I started to do some research into our history as women. And like I knew this intuitively, but I didn't know how real this is, that we as women have been told how our lives are supposed to look for most of history. Like everyone and their mom has an opinion about what we should be doing with our lives, specifically during this kind of 25 to 30 to 40-ish range. The pressure is so heavy. And so I just was like, oh my gosh, this is really a thing. And what I couldn't find for it though was a name. We talk about post grad years, we talk about being a
Mm.
young adult, we talk about a midlife crisis, we talk about all these different things, but there's not really a name for the time when you're figuring all these things out. And so that's why I decided to make one. And so I call it the everything era.
And I think that the language that you've developed really does hit everything. I resonate with that. When I was 25 years old, I had experienced a quarter life crisis. My crisis didn't happen midlife. I mean, I'm not necessarily at the midlife point, but I don't think that I was expecting. I was familiar with midlife crisis, but I had never heard about a quarter life crisis. In fact, I invented it and then I saw it in Urban Dictionary. I was like, someone else beat me to this. But it was just such a pivotal moment. Like my mom was diagnosed with brain cancer. She was given a 30% chance to live. I had just ended a 3-year relationship with a man I thought I was going to marry. My grandmother had passed away. I'm finishing up grad school, not knowing what to do with my life. And it was ish. Not necessarily like the windows of ish, but I was stepping into the everything era that I didn't even know. But I knew I felt pressure, but I didn't know what to label it and to name it. Do
Yeah.
you have a moment where you kind of realize and you step back and say, wait a minute, I'm stepping into my everything era, or there was like something that defined this for you? Now you're a little bit later and you've moved from like somebody that's running alongside women that are 25 to now you get to step into a perspective and look back at those that are in their
Mhm.
25 entering into the 30s with a little bit different perspective. But what was that
Yeah.
defining moment for you?
I think that I mean, there something happens, I think, somewhere around 25 again ish. And that's sort of what happened for me is it felt like after college, there was just a lot of time and space to figure things out, like
Mm.
try something, go travel around the world. That's what I did. Take a job that pays nothing. I also did that. The world is your oyster. You can kind of mess things up and it's going to be okay. It felt like bowling with bumpers. But then all
Yeah.
of a sudden, somewhere around 25, it's like you look around and whoa, someone's engaged and someone else just bought a house and like that person's pregnant. Like, what? When did we get to this point that like actually the cement is starting to dry, or like you actually need to kind of figure some things out, and or other people around you are, which makes you feel like you sort of
Mm.
need to. So that was really what happened for me that kind of kicked off this everything era. But I think the more pivotal thing for me has been the fact that decisions historically for me are really, really difficult. I am a firstborn, type A, people pleaser, peacekeeper. I'm an Enneagram 2, so I want everyone to love me. And I rule follower. I want to get all the things right. So I spent a lot of time throughout my life, and especially in my everything era, looking to my right and left, going, am I doing this right? Like, how do you know
Hmm.
if this is your person? And how old are you supposed to be when you get married? And how long are you supposed to have dated first? And um, how do you know if you should have kids? And how, what kind of, like, is this, am I doing this right? Um, and there was one day in particular where I was swirling in this so badly, and it had to do with marriage. I was dating a really great guy named Carl Wilson, who I've now been married to for a decade. And I knew that I loved him, and I knew that something was really special there, but I didn't know how to know if he was the one. And so I'm asking everyone I can get close to, like, how did you know? What does this look like? And, people say things like, you just know. And I'm like, that's not helping me. Um, so I'm sitting with a friend and I'm spiraling. And finally, she sits across from me. She grabs my shoulders and she kind of shook me. And she said, Stephanie, you get to decide. You get to decide
Hmm.
when it comes to this, and when it comes to how you spend your money and what you do, what job you take, and where you live. Like, what we're talking about here is not right or wrong answers. We're not talking about like good or bad. We're talking about shades of gray that like are all pretty good and none of them are perfect, and you're the one who has to like live with this in your life. And so what do you want to do? And that phrase has, I mean, I have to say it even to this day to myself all the time. You get to decide.
Yeah.
But that phrase has really set me free to be I like to quote the holiday, to be the leading lady of my own life, to to accept the fact that a beautiful life isn't one size fits all. There are a lot of really good ways to do this. And we get to decide. Not only that, though, we have to decide, because if we don't make decisions in these areas of our lives, life or circumstances or other people or time will make them for us, and we may
Yeah.
not like how it ends up. So that was really the big thing, was you get to decide. And I say it all the time to myself.
So, for maybe someone that's out of the everything era, maybe they are over the age of 35, and you just said, like, it might not end up the way that you wanted. I'm paraphrasing, but
Yeah.
it, what do we do now when life doesn't go as expected? So I'm
Yeah.
over 35 now, and there have been some things in my life that I'm walking through, and I'm like, oh, this was not what I expected. How do you navigate life for somebody that is out of the everything era, but now they're entering into I get to create it now era?
Yeah.
Do you get to I just want to pause for a second, because one thing that I heard is that you got to meet with somebody, and she just kind of shook you proverbially by the shoulders and then asked you this question, and now you get to be that mentor for other people. So I just want to acknowledge that, like, job well done, Stephanie. You didn't take that information and just keep it for yourself. You now get to mentor other people. So for someone on the other side, where it maybe you've walked through a season where things didn't end up the way that you wanted, hoped, or expected, what do you do now?
This is something that I talk about a lot in the book, because while um the, like because that seems like it sort of flies in the face of getting to decide. There are so many parts of our lives that
Mm,
we don't get to control. There's so many things that are outside of our control. But I think that the heart here is doing what we can in the areas where we do really have a say. And so that would be my question now, is
yeah.
like, what can you control? What can you influence now? And one of the stories that I tell in the book is that one, it took me a really long time to figure out if I wanted to be a mom, and I really wasn't sure. And part of it was because I felt like I was supposed to want to be a mom. Like, I didn't feel like I actually really had the choice. And so that was a really long road for me to walk. But once we did decide, we really want to have kids, of course, it did not happen right away, and it did not come easily. And um, in the book, let me pull up my notes because I want to make sure I get this right.
And
Um,
as you're looking that up, I'm just going to let people know the book that Stephanie is referring to is Create a Life That You Love, How to Quiet Outside Voices So That You Can Finally Hear Your Own. It is out at Barnes and Noble, Amazon, and I just want to push this like in the middle of the podcast. This is a book that I'm holding in my hands that Stephanie sent to me in this beautiful box. The design, for those that aren't watching on YouTube and listening to the podcast, the design is stunning. And I want to actually take this amazing package that she sent me and I want to send it to a lucky listener. So I want you to tag Stephanie on social media, tag me with something that you're walking away. What's something that you are doing to create the life that you love, the one that you want to live? And so tag us on social media and a lucky winner will get it. Okay. Did that give you enough
I
time, Steph, to
love
find
that.
it?
Yes, it did. Yes,
Okay,
it
good.
did. So as you know, these different areas when we're like single and dating and it's just absolutely not going the way that we want it to, or when we are, we have our eyes set on a particular career path and it's just like not materializing, or we're trying to get pregnant and it's not working, or whatever the thing is that's like, okay, I have decided, I have made a decision about what I want and I'm not getting it. Um, I really, through walking through this as many times as I've identified these 4 different things that we actually can still do, even with areas of our life that are really um, heartbreakingly stubborn. Um,
Mm,
so the first one is we can quit. And I think it's really, really important to know that we're allowed to do that. Like
mm,
if you are um, like if you are dating and this whole process is just soul crushing and you need a break or just to walk away altogether, you can. Same is true for jobs, same is true for buying a house, same is true for trying to get pregnant. Like any of these really giant decisions, or even small ones too. I think knowing that we can walk away gives us the freedom to decide if we want to keep going. And so I think
mm,
that's a really important first thing. The second thing is we can decide to be more stubborn than this thing and keep going. Sometimes the reason that something hasn't happened yet is because it just hasn't happened yet. And we just
mm.
have to keep walking. I think that that's
Yeah.
really true when it comes to so many of our careers. Like nobody nobody makes it somewhere great overnight, and nobody gets to somewhere great without getting knocked down a lot of times. It's kind of like who can stick it out the longest, who can keep going the longest and just say, I'm going to keep going until I get to this place where I know I want to be. Another option is to change tactics. There's that quote that people often attribute to Einstein that I don't think Einstein actually said, but the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Einstein aside, that's really true. That doesn't make any sense to, like, if what we're trying isn't working, we can try
Mm,
something else, and that's within our control. And then the last thing is to ask for help. And I
mm,
think, I hope that this is changing culturally, but for the longest time, there was just this idea that, like, if you were strong, you were doing it on your own. Like, that is strength. Asking for help is weakness. And I
mm,
couldn't disagree with that more, because these areas of our life that are so important, like, why in the world wouldn't we surround ourselves with the best possible team in order to get to where we want to go? And so when it came to trying to become parents, Carl and I did all of those things. And really, it was kind of each one really helped us a lot in different ways and in different times. And we did end up finally getting pregnant with help. And we have twin girls that are 3.5, that I know twins are very close to your heart as well.
they are.
Yep.
So I want to reiterate and also clarify. So option number one is that you can quit. Option number two is that you could keep
Keep going.
moving forward.
Just keep
Option
trying.
number three is that you just develop new tactics and strategy. Then option number four is to help. Now, are you saying that that's progressive, or are you saying that you get to pick
I would say
one of those
pick.
four options?
I would say
Okay.
pick. Yeah,
Okay.
pick. And also, like, if you if you're like, I haven't actually been trying this for this long, maybe I do need to just keep going, and you keep going for a while, and like you're like, okay, but still, like, nothing is changing, then you can make a different decision. But those are options, and I love them because I feel like they're available to
Mm,
all of us no matter what we're facing. And I just, when something is so stubborn and like not moving the way that we want it to, it's such a helpless feeling. And I think that having those options takes a little bit of that feeling of helplessness out of it. At least it does for me.
Okay, so how I process is a little contrarian, as in I'm looking for holes or I'm looking for potential problems. And I know that there's somebody out there that's like, okay, I've been wanting to make this decision, but my best friend told me this is not the right decision, or my mom doesn't think that this is the right decision, or my boss doesn't think this is the right decision. For somebody out there that is saying, okay, I'm walking through these steps and I'm trying to create the life that I love and I'm making these decisions, and my people closest to me or people that feel in a sense responsible for me disagree. What do people do? Do I hold on to my loved ones' opinions, or do I have this conviction like, no, I'm going to continue to move forward? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, for sure. So in the book, one of the first things that we do as we're talking about the everything era, and again, these things are true. The pressure and expectations that are on women for the way that we're supposed to live our lives is true no matter our age. It is forever. Um, I talk to women specifically in this everything era just because that's where I just was. Um, but it's true for everybody. There are so many opinions about the ways that we're supposed to live our lives. It's
Mm-hmm.
cultural, it's societal, it's historical, it's familial, it's there's biological elements. There's all kinds of voices telling us what our lives are supposed to look like, and it's really confusing and hard to navigate these. And so one of the first things that I think is really important to do is to identify what the expectations, what shoulds we're walking in with, because sometimes they've been around for so long that they've kind of faded into the background. They're like part of the furniture or the architecture of the way that we see ourselves in the world. I have three different kinds of expectations that we walk through, again, because they're hard to spot. But the first is explicit expectations. And these are the ones that are like, good women do this. Or
Mm-hmm.
in our family, we are doctors. You shall be a doctor. Or like you need to get married and have this many kids. Like there are these really explicit expectations. Other ones are implicit, where they're not spoken out loud but they're no less understood. And then there are assumed expectations where like no one's actually said this, but we wear this pressure anyway, and it's like we're not really sure where it came from, or no one told us that we had to live our lives this way, but we just sort of picked it up along the way. Um, so I think one of the very first things we need to do is take a look at what expectations we're carrying, what we think our lives are supposed to look like. And then once we have that identified, ask ourselves, who said it has to be this way? And is that someone that we really trust to guide us in the most important parts of our lives? Because a lot of times it's not. A lot of times it's some random aunt along the way said something, and you've been living as though this is true or has to be true forever. And like, but you wouldn't have her in your inner corner, in your board of advisors. She's not one of your inner circle. So that's one thing, and that I think separates out a lot of the expectations. And it's a process of defining success for ourselves. What do we actually want? So we start there.
Mm-hmm.
But then we get to exactly what you're asking about, which is, okay, but what if someone who's in your corner, in your inner circle, disagrees with a decision you've made? What do you do then? And I think that it's easier to, one of the exercises we talk about is defining your cabinet. In the book, we're turning down the voices that are telling us what we're supposed to be doing with our lives. But we're not trying to make these decisions alone. We can't, life is too hard to do by ourselves. We need people in our corner. We just need to decide who's in our corner, who we're going to listen to, what kind of voices, like who we want really guiding us. That's really helpful to, once we know who's in our corner, it's easier to tune out the voices at Thanksgiving dinner that are telling you your life is supposed to look a certain way. But again, sometimes we get to a place where, you really feel like you're supposed to do something and someone really close to you disagrees. And I think at that point, like, I think it's information gathering. Like, why do they disagree? Do they know something that you don't? Can they see a hole in this that you haven't been able to identify? Um, do they have expertise in this particular area? Or like, have they been able to walk this out in their own life? I'm thinking about, if someone, I had, so when Carl and I were dating, my boss at the time, who didn't know me super well and didn't know Carl super well, called me into his office to tell me that he thought that Carl was he was concerned about the company I was keeping. And he was talking about Carl, who I was dating, who I've now been married to for 10 years. Um, and I'm like, I mean, that was concerning because when someone says, like, again, I'm a people pleaser. I usually have a lot of cooks in the kitchen, helping me with things. So that was pretty like jarring to have someone say that, especially a person in authority. But I had to quickly check myself and go, does he know me? And does he actually know my person? And does he actually know what direction I'm walking in life? And the answer was absolutely no. Um, he wasn't in my cabinet. He wasn't in my inner
Mm.
circle. If someone who was in my circle had questions about our relationship or about your relationship, I think it's worth digging into why and finding out if they're seeing some red flags that you don't see. But also, sometimes the people in our corner have a horse in the race or something in their own story that's kind of being triggered by the decisions you're making. Or
Mm.
it's just, I think we just need to ask a lot of questions before we change our tack in life completely based on what someone else has told us to do. Does that make
So
sense?
no, it does. It does. And so this isn't something that you're just pontificating about. You're actually doing it. You are moving to the other side of the world from where you currently live. And with what you feel comfortable sharing, what are you doing like this big significant move that is creating the life that you want to love? What's on the horizons for you, Stephanie?
I'm so glad you asked about this because this is what I was thinking about when we were talking about that. Like, our families aren't thrilled that we're doing this. No one is thrilled that we're taking the grandkids like across an ocean. And
Hold
so
on, I
that
have to
really,
give you a drum roll. I have to give you a drum roll for every podcast listener that's out there.
okay,
Brrr. Stephanie, you're creating the life that you love. What are you doing?
we're moving to Spain.
I'm so excited for you. I'm so excited for you.
We're moving to
First of
Spain.
all, Barcelona is my favorite city in the world, or should I say Barcelona is one of my favorite
Barcelona.
cities. Can we ask where exactly you're moving?
Oh yeah. So we're going to Granada, which is in Andalusia. So it's in
Oh,
kind
you
of the southern part
are.
of
Oh,
Spain.
yes.
Yes, we're going to
Yes.
Granada. And I'm so
Yes.
excited. We're taking our 3.5-year-old twins. We are bringing our businesses and a handful of suitcases, and we're going to go do it. Um, it's cool because some of the reasons behind this are really dreamy and exciting and fun. Some of them are like when you're creating a life you love, sometimes you make really intentional decisions that fit for a season, but don't always fit forever. And that's kind
Yeah.
of how this last time, like these last handful of years have been for us, where we're like, we really built this, beautifully intentional life, but it is big and heavy and
Hmm.
expensive and exhausting. And like, we just need a break from that for a while. So yeah. And of course we have all kinds of opinions and thoughts about what we're doing. Most of it is like total wholehearted support. Some of it's sadness, which I share. I
Hmm.
don't like being away from my people, but we've really weighed the costs and the benefits, and we're like, this is something we're really really excited about doing. So we're gonna do
Well,
it.
I'm so excited about this decision because you're literally outworking what people are experiencing and you're not just thinking about it or giving research, you're actually living it. Stephanie, I'm so excited for you to see the journey that you've been on. You've been wanting to help women for a number of years. And I think that this is the greatest resource that you have to produce to date. I think there's more, but this is the best resource to date. I'm so excited for you. I'm so excited for what is on the horizon for you. And for people, we just scratched the surface of this conversation and you really go more into depth. There's going to be links to find out more about Stephanie, more about her resources, more about the assets that she's created and the books that she's writing, and also a link to her podcast. We're actually on the same podcast network. So
Yeah, yeah.
shout out to Annie Downs and That Sounds Fun team. We love you guys. We're honored to be doing this together. And now we get to be in an umbrella family of other podcasts. So Stephanie, I just wish you the best in everything that is on the horizon for you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your flexibility. Thank you for being a cheerleader, not just for me, but for so many people. I'm grateful for you. And I just pray blessings over your life.
Thank you, friend. Thank you for having me.
For more information on Stephanie, you can click the link in the show notes as well as hit the subscribe or like button. If this podcast has meant anything to you or there's a resource that you feel someone else can benefit from, consider sharing online or subscribing on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Thank you so much, friends, and we'll catch you for the next episode.